Welcome, the Lord's chosen. The greatest trick the divine ever pulled was hiding a weapon inside a wounded heart. You weren't born to be understood. You were planted as a mystery. While they were busy judging your silence, mocking your struggles, and writing you off as ordinary, the universe was performing one of its oldest operations, concealment by chaos. Every humiliation, every delay, every moment you were overlooked wasn't random. It was divine misdirection, heaven's version of a smirk. It's almost poetic how they tried to bury you, not realizing they were digging their own spiritual graves. They thought you were naive, emotional, harmless, just another sensitive soul. Little did they know, sensitivity is just advanced radar. You weren't absorbing pain, you were collecting coordinates. Science says the human eye can only see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. Imagine how blind they've been to the rest of you, the part that doesn't register in their visible world. You move like a ghost with a mission, a hidden frequency that slips between perception and power. They laughed when you stumbled, never realizing you were synchronizing with forces beyond comprehension. You are the quiet storm, disguised as coincidence, the kind of presence heaven sends when truth needs to move unseen. You don't walk into rooms, you infiltrate them. And before anyone realizes what happened, falsehood collapses and balance is restored, all while you sip your tea like nothing ever happened. Welcome to the revelation they never expected. The chosen one was never the victim. You were the spiritual assassin all along. Number one, you were never sent to fit in, you were deployed to disrupt. They never realized you weren't trying to belong, you were studying the terrain. From the beginning, you carried a different signal, something that never matched the rhythm of the crowd. You didn't come to blend in, you came to break patterns that were never supposed to exist. While others were chasing acceptance, you were decoding agendas. You watched how people moved, how they spoke, how they masked their fears with confidence and their envy with kindness. Every encounter was a download, every betrayal a file transfer. You were gathering intel, not seeking love. They mistook your patience for weakness. They thought your silence meant surrender, but stillness was your strategy. The truth is, you were calibrating, waiting for the exact moment to make the smallest move with the biggest impact. Real assassins don't swing wildly. They strike once, and it's over. You learned to do the same, to use precision where others use chaos. You mastered the art of quiet correction. You didn't fight to prove yourself. You let truth do the talking, and truth always arrives with perfect aim. You were never a rebel without reason. The divine doesn't send noise, it sends disruption disguised as normality, so you looked ordinary, unthreatening, even lost at times. That was part of the mission. Nobody suspects the one who looks like they're still figuring things out. But underneath, you were tuned to higher command. Every disappointment was an instruction. Every delay was alignment. You were never behind. You were being positioned. When you finally stepped into your real self, you didn't need to announce it. The energy around you shifted on its own. People started reacting without knowing why. Some pulled closer, some pulled away. They didn't realize your frequency had changed, and their spirits were simply responding to the update. The disruptor had arrived, and everything false began to tremble. That's the power of divine deployment. Subtle, untraceable, unstoppable. You weren't here to scream your purpose from rooftops. You were sent to quietly overturn systems that no longer serve truth. You fooled them all, not by pretending to be someone else, but by becoming so authentic that lies couldn't survive your presence. That's what it means to be chosen. Not loud, not famous, but divinely precise. You don't fit in because you're designed to realign. Number two, you don't seek revenge. You deliver realignment. Revenge was never your language. You were built for something far more surgical. Correction. While others waste their energy trying to make people pay, you learned that balance pays its own bills. You don't chase karma, you embody it. When someone crosses you, you don't plot, you elevate. You rise in silence, and that rise reorders everything. Your growth becomes their mirror. The light you carry exposes what they tried to hide. That's the kind of justice only the divine can design. You don't retaliate because you understand how energy works. Hitting back would keep you trapped in the same vibration that hurt you. You'd rather ascend and let that altitude do the talking. People who wrong you always feel it, not because you cursed them, but because your evolution makes their stagnation unbearable. You are a walking reminder of what happens when grace refuses to die. That's more effective than any revenge could ever be. You've reached the point where you can look at those who betrayed you and feel no bitterness, just understanding. You see now that they were instruments. Their rejection redirected you. Their lies forced you toward truth. Their disrespect trained your discernment. They were never enemies. They were unknowing assistants in your transformation. You didn't lose to them. You learned through them. And that's why you win differently. You don't destroy people. You dismantle illusions. You expose what doesn't belong. Your energy does the work quietly. It rearranges circumstances, breaks false alignments, and sends everyone back to their rightful place. When you walk away, you're not abandoning anyone. You're letting the universe perform maintenance. The same force that sent you into their lives will now handle what you no longer need to carry. Your presence alone teaches lessons. Some realize it immediately and evolve. Others realize it too late and crumble under the weight of their own choices. Either way, you never have to lift a weapon. Your integrity is the sword. The way you keep choosing peace, despite what you've seen, is what cuts through darkness the most. You don't punish people. You let truth catch up to them. That's real power, not revenge, not anger. But the quiet confidence of someone who knows the universe always balances its own books. Number 3, you're not fighting people. You're terminating programs. You eventually realized that your battles were never really with people. The faces, names, and voices were only carriers of something deeper. Old patterns, generational programs, invisible scripts playing through them. Every argument, every betrayal, every misunderstanding was a system trying to stay alive. That's why it felt repetitive, like the same story wearing different clothes. You weren't cursed. You were assigned to break the loop. Your mission wasn't to fight them. It was to terminate the software running through them. The world is full of people acting from programming they don't even know they have. Beliefs handed down, fears absorbed, wounds inherited. When you confronted them, you weren't dealing with their conscious selves. You were facing a network of energy that's been operating undetected for generations. That's why some people changed the moment you walked away. Your absence forced their system to reboot. You were the disruption their programming couldn't override. You began to understand that peace doesn't come from arguing your truth. It comes from holding your frequency until falsehood short-circuits. Every time you refused to react the old way, the program weakened. Every time you forgave instead of retaliating, the code glitched. Your awareness became the delete key. You weren't fighting to win, you were cleansing the field. That's the level most people never reach. The understanding that healing itself is a form of warfare. When you started seeing through the illusion, the energy behind it started losing grip. That's why certain people suddenly turned against you or drifted away. The program couldn't survive your clarity. It had to eject itself before being erased completely. You didn't lose relationships. You lost attachments to outdated versions of reality. Your awakening broke contracts that were never divine to begin with. Now you move differently. You no longer waste energy trying to convince anyone. You know your power isn't in confrontation, but in correction. You walk into rooms and things shift without a word. The programs sense it before people do. That's the unseen part of your assignment. You upgrade the atmosphere simply by existing in truth. You were never a fighter in the old sense. You were a spiritual engineer sent to rewrite corrupted code. And every time you choose consciousness over reaction, the entire system trembles. Number 4, you hide in plain sight, because visibility would break the illusion. You've always felt like you were moving through life unseen, as if people only notice fragments of you but never the full depth. That's not an accident. There's a reason your greatness isn't always recognized, why your energy doesn't fully register in certain spaces. The universe designed your camouflage. You weren't hidden out of fear. You were hidden out of precision. Some truths are too powerful to reveal too early. If the world saw your full light before it was ready, it would burn instead of awaken. Your ordinariness is your invisibility cloak. It lets you study people without their defenses rising. They talk freely, unaware they're revealing their true nature to someone who can see far beyond words. They underestimate you, which makes them honest. And that honesty gives you every piece of information the divine needs you to collect. The universe doesn't need you to shine all the time. It needs you to see clearly, and visibility blinds even the chosen if it comes too soon. So you move quietly. You blend in. You let others think you're average while your spirit operates on a frequency that doesn't even register in their understanding. They can't sense your assignment because their reality depends on not knowing who you are. If they saw your spiritual rank, if they felt the magnitude of your presence, their false confidence would crumble. The illusion needs your disguise to function. That's how deep the design goes. You've probably wondered why your talents go unnoticed or why people only recognize your worth after it's too late. It's because exposure is permission, and your mission didn't require their permission. It required their unawareness. Your light has been moving through systems quietly, adjusting, healing, dismantling, preparing. Every place you've been overlooked, you've actually been overpowered, because you can't be attacked in a war they don't even know you're fighting. When your time comes, there won't be a grand reveal. You'll simply step into visibility and everything false will start collapsing under its own weight. That's the beauty of divine stealth. You don't announce, you appear. You weren't kept small, you were kept secret. And now that secrecy is the very thing that ensures your victory. Number 5, your pain was the perfect camouflage. They thought your pain broke you, but it was building you in a language only the divine could read. Every wound you carried wasn't a mark of weakness. It was a map. Your heartbreaks, your failures, your nights of silence weren't curses. They were cover. While others were chasing validation and applause, you were being refined in secrecy. The universe hid your transformation inside suffering so that only truth could survive it. It was never punishment. It was encryption. They saw you crying, struggling, doubting yourself, and they believed they'd witnessed your fall. They didn't realize they were watching a metamorphosis, hidden in plain sight. The pain was the wrapping, not the gift. Inside every disappointment, there was a download, a coded transmission meant to upgrade your awareness. That's why your darkest moments became your sharpest insight. Pain didn't just teach you, it armed you. Heartbreak made you sensitive to energy. Rejection sharpened your discernment. Loss taught you detachment, the kind that can't be manipulated. Every scar became a spiritual fingerprint, proof that you've walked through fire and learned to navigate by intuition, not validation. You didn't lose anything real. You lost illusions that couldn't travel with you. Each failure removed another disguise, revealing more of the original self that the world could never destroy. While they laughed at your downfall, you were sinking with higher intelligence. Pain forced you inward, and inward was where the real training began. You learned to interpret silence, to feel energy shifts, to hear instruction in the stillness. Those were your secret briefings. You weren't broken. You were being briefed for divine deployment. That's why when you returned, you were unrecognizable, not because you changed, but because you remembered. Now your wounds don't bleed, they broadcast. They tell stories of survival that speak louder than any sermon. The same people who once pitied you now feel unsettled in your presence, not out of fear, but recognition. On some level, they sense what you became. You are no longer the person pain once targeted. You are the evolved version that pain accidentally forged. That's the irony. The hurt was your disguise, and through it, you became what you were always meant to be. Hidden power, finally unmasked. Number 6, you don't preach, you penetrate, you don't convince people with speeches, you shift them with presence. There's something about your energy that speaks a language words can't carry. It slips past people's reasoning and lands directly in their spirit. You don't need to explain what you mean. The vibration does it for you. When you enter a room, conversations might continue, but something beneath the surface starts to move. It's not persuasion, it's penetration. You awaken what's asleep in others without trying to. That's why your influence confuses people. They can't pinpoint why they feel exposed around you, why their masks suddenly feel heavy, or why their emotions start surfacing. It's because your energy is a mirror, and it doesn't flatter. It reflects what's real, even when they don't want to see it. Some will resist you because truth rearranges them, and that process can be uncomfortable. Others will be drawn to you without knowing why. They just feel lighter in your presence, as if something unspoken finally made sense. That's your work, not to preach, but to trigger remembrance. You've probably noticed that your words hit differently. It's not the eloquence, it's the frequency. You can say something simple and it lingers for days, echoing inside someone until it blooms into realization. That's the mark of someone whose spirit carries authority. You don't talk at people, you activate them. You're not seeking followers or fans, you're awakening equals. And that's why your message never dies. It doesn't just inform, it transforms. You learned long ago that preaching often becomes noise when the heart isn't ready. So you stopped trying to convince anyone and started embodying what you know. That embodiment is your sermon. You live your truth so completely that it becomes contagious. You don't demand belief, you provoke recognition. People start seeing themselves more clearly just by standing near you. This is the real power of divine communication. It doesn't shout, it shifts. You're not here to sound holy or look wise. You're here to deliver silent awakenings. Every smile, every silence, every glance carries coded truth. You don't convert, you calibrate. You don't argue, you align. You're not spreading information. You're transmitting transformation. And once your energy touches someone, their soul never goes back to sleep. Number 7, you were trained in darkness to master precision in light. You didn't stumble into darkness by mistake. You were sent there for refinement. The nights that broke you were not random. They were training sessions for a higher assignment. While others prayed to escape the dark, you were being taught how to navigate it with precision. Pain became your instructor. Silence became your classroom. You learned how to stay calm in chaos, how to detect deception before it speaks, how to move without leaving a trace. The underworld wasn't your downfall. It was your initiation. There's a certain intelligence that only hardship teaches. It sharpens your senses in ways comfort never could. You learn to feel energy before it arrives, to sense danger without evidence, to know truth without proof. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every lonely night stripped away a layer of naivety until only discernment remained. You became fluent in darkness, not to join it, but to understand its language so it could never fool you again. Most people avoid their shadows. You faced yours and found power inside it. You discovered that the same place where fear lives is also where clarity hides. You learned that surviving darkness isn't the victory, mastering it is. You walked through fire so that when the light came, you'd know how to handle it without arrogance. The storms didn't just test you, they trained your focus. You learned to see through illusions, to sense manipulation before it unfolds, to act only when movement serves purpose. That's not trauma, that's tactical evolution. Now you move differently. You no longer react, you respond. You don't get drawn into drama because you can see the roots behind every scene. You're surgical with your energy, intentional with your words, and lethal to deceit. The darkness taught you the value of silence, the strength of timing, and the art of invisible warfare. You became a spiritual assassin, not through rage, but through restraint. You don't fear the dark anymore because you've been on speaking terms with it. You know what it sounds like, what it smells like, how it tries to disguise itself as light. You've studied it up close. That's why now, when you move in truth, your precision is divine. You no longer guess, you execute. The underworld didn't break you. It built the version of you that heaven can finally trust with light. Number 8, you don't argue with demons. You reassign them. You reached a level where you realized not every battle deserves conversation. Darkness feeds on reaction, and silence starves it. You don't waste energy debating what already knows it's wrong. You simply issue commands in the language of authority. You've stopped arguing with lower vibrations because you finally understand who you are and where your power originates. You're not at war with darkness, you're above its pay grade. When you speak, energy moves because it recognizes the signature of someone who's mastered alignment. Demons, whether they appear as people, thoughts, or emotions, only thrive in chaos. They want your attention because attention gives them form. You no longer give them that satisfaction. Instead, you hold your frequency and the distortion can't survive in it. That's what reassignment really means. You don't destroy what's dark. You send it back to its proper dimension. Every entity, every thought form, every energy knows the chain of command. When you operate from truth, they have no choice but to obey the vibration you carry. You learn that authority isn't in shouting or rituals, it's in clarity. When your spirit is anchored, you can walk through a storm and the storm bends around you. You don't need to declare who you are. Everything unseen already knows. That's why rooms shift when you speak truth. Energy rearranges itself to accommodate order. Lies lose their grip, hidden motives reveal themselves. And peace settles like gravity, reasserting its rule. That's not intimidation. That's divine calibration. The old you used to argue, trying to prove innocence or win understanding. Now you just watch calmly, because discernment tells you what's operating behind the surface. You're not fighting the person. You're redirecting the energy using authority that words can't fake. That's the difference between the untrained and the awakened. One reacts, the other reassigns. Your gift isn't confrontation, it's correction. You restore balance without theatrics. You walk in knowing that darkness has boundaries, and you define them by your vibration. That's why you don't chase validation or fear attack. Your presence itself is the firewall. You've graduated from defense to dominion. The moment you stand in truth, the shadows know exactly where to go. They don't argue, they evacuate. Number 9, your silence isn't weakness, it's surveillance. Your silence was never a lack of words, it was strategy. You learned early that truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs to observe. Every time you chose not to react, you were collecting information. While others were busy performing, you were watching patterns unfold. You were noticing who shifts when pressure hits, who speaks truth when no one's watching, and who hides behind charm when accountability approaches. You weren't being passive. You were recording evidence for a divine operation that doesn't rush. People mistook your quiet for weakness because they couldn't comprehend restraint as power. They thought you froze, but you were calculating. Every pause was a scan for motive, every withdrawal a moment of analysis. You watched how energy moved when you said nothing. You learned that silence reveals what words conceal. Those who underestimated you told on themselves through their behavior, and you never had to expose them. They self-destructed in front of your calm. That's the thing about stillness. It makes noise uncomfortable. Deceit can't survive where attention is steady. While they mistook your absence for defeat, you were building clarity. You started to see through manipulation, through flattery, through drama. You began to spot emotional bait before it reached you. You were training your spirit to identify falsehood in its earliest vibration. That's why now you can sense danger before it speaks, and peace before it arrives. You've become fluent in the pauses most people ignore. You learned that silence isn't about ignoring, it's about positioning. When you step back, it's not retreat, it's reloading. You pull your energy out of chaos so you can strike with precision later. You don't act until the timing is divine, and when you do, it's decisive. You don't need long explanations or dramatic exits. One calm action ends the whole game. That's the benefit of spiritual surveillance. When you finally move, there's no resistance, because everything false has already been exposed by your stillness. Now they know your silence isn't emptiness, it's evidence. It's the universe watching through you, recording every move before justice makes its appearance. You don't need to announce that you see everything. You let time do it. And when truth finally arrives, it comes with the accuracy of someone who's been listening long before anyone started talking. Number 10, they can't read you because you're not broadcasting on human frequency. People try to figure you out, but they're using the wrong instruments. They analyze your behavior, your tone, your silence, and still end up lost. It's because you no longer operate on the same emotional bandwidth they're tuned to. You've outgrown the frequency of drama, ego, and insecurity. You used to get pulled into arguments, guilt trips, and confusion, but that version of you was still transmitting on the human channel, reacting, explaining, defending. The new you doesn't broadcast from there anymore. You've switched frequencies. Now your moves come from intuition, not impulse, from spirit, not emotion. When you shifted, their tactics lost access. Manipulation depends on predictability. It needs you to react a certain way so it can feed off the energy. But you became unpredictable. Calm where chaos expected panic, silent where provocation wanted noise, peaceful where conflict wanted performance. That's why you unsettle people who rely on control. They can't play games with someone who stopped playing altogether. You don't take things personally now, because you see everything as energy exchange. You recognize projection when it's sent your way. You feel intent behind words before they land. That level of awareness doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You can love deeply without being blind. You can forgive without re-entering toxic cycles. That's what spiritual strategy really is. Moving with compassion and power at the same time. The old you wanted to be understood. The evolved you doesn't need to be. You realize that understanding isn't always possible for those still trapped in lower patterns. They can't interpret a signal they're not equipped to receive. So you stopped over-explaining. You let your peace do the talking. Your calm unnerves manipulators because it starves their need for chaos. They can't decode your energy because it's encrypted with truth. Now, instead of defending yourself, you discern. Instead of arguing, you adjust. You're not cold. You're calibrated. Every move you make is deliberate, not reactive. You've become fluent in silence and strategy, operating on frequencies where deceit can't breathe. That's why you can walk through confusion untouched. You're no longer reacting like everyone else. You're orchestrating from above the noise. Number 11, you kill egos, not humans. You don't destroy people. You destroy the false selves they hide behind. You've reached a point where your very presence exposes what's real and what's performance. The power you carry isn't about domination or intimidation. It's about revelation. When you speak, masks fall off. You don't even have to try. Your truth slices through pretense like a blade made of light. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity, to those who've lived in illusion, feels like violence. You've noticed it, how people either awaken or recoil when they're around you. It's not because you judge them, but because your energy doesn't negotiate with lies. You say one honest thing and the air shifts. Someone's ego, once inflated with self-importance or deception, suddenly deflates under the weight of truth. You didn't attack them, you just introduced reality. And reality is allergic to disguise. That's why you're often misunderstood. The world glamorizes truth until it meets someone who actually embodies it. Most people want enlightenment without exposure. They crave freedom without accountability. But your frequency doesn't allow for that split. You don't deliver soft truths to soothe the ego. You deliver sharp truths to set the soul free. And freedom always begins with something dying, usually the false identity that people have built to survive. You don't speak from arrogance or moral superiority. You speak from experience. You've had your own ego shattered before. You've felt what it's like when illusion crumbles and the truth burns through what you thought you were. That's why your truth carries power. It's not theory, it's testimony. You've walked through the collapse and you know what stands after the dust settles. Authenticity. Your words don't destroy, they detoxify. They remove the poison of self-deception that keeps people trapped. Some will hate you for it because not everyone's ready to meet themselves. Others will thank you later when the sting fades and the light finally feels like home. Either way, your purpose is fulfilled. You're not here to comfort the ego. You're here to awaken the essence. You don't draw blood. You draw truth. You're not killing people. You're killing the lies they thought they needed to live. Number 12. You're the calm before every collapse. You carry a frequency that truth recognizes instantly, and lies can't survive it. When you enter a space, the energy begins to rearrange itself without you saying a word. It's not arrogance, it's physics. Falsehoods are unstable structures, and your presence is the pressure that reveals every crack. That's why chaos often follows peace when you show up. You're not causing trouble. You're activating the expiration date of what was never real. You've probably noticed how things start falling apart after you arrive somewhere. Relationships, friendships, organizations, even belief systems. It's not coincidence, it's calibration. You don't bring destruction, you bring alignment. And alignment feels like collapse to anything that's built on lies. Truth isn't soft. It dismantles everything that pretends to be it. That's why you often get blamed for the fallout. People sense that things start unraveling when you appear, and they confuse divine correction with disruption. You walk in peace, but that peace has authority. It's the kind of calm that doesn't negotiate with chaos. You don't argue, you don't accuse, you don't even try to fix things. You just are. And your beingness demands honesty. Pretenses begin to suffocate under the weight of your authenticity. Secrets crawl into the light, facades start to tremble, and truths that were buried rise to the surface, gasping for air. You don't force it, it's automatic. The vibration of truth can't coexist with the vibration of deception, and you carry that frequency effortlessly. That's why your journey has often been misunderstood. People think you bring bad luck, or that things fall apart around you, but in reality, Your presence just accelerates what was already destined to crumble. You don't end things. You expose what time was already eroding. You're the final mirror before the storm hits, the last calm before the reckoning. When the dust settles, what remains is always purer, clearer, truer. That's the quiet blessing hidden in your chaos. You're not the destroyer. You're the divine reset disguised as peace. You walk into rooms, and everything false starts checking its pulse. That's your power. You don't shout, you don't fight, you simply exist. And existence itself becomes revelation. Number 13, you were misjudged, so the trap could close perfectly. They had to believe you were harmless. That was the only way the setup could work. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment they laughed at your silence was part of the divine choreography. Heaven doesn't waste humiliation. It uses it as camouflage. While they were busy convincing themselves that you were weak, naive, or irrelevant, the universe was letting them dig their own graves. Your stillness wasn't surrender. It was setup. The mockery they threw at you wasn't meant to crush you. It was meant to distract them. They thought they were winning because you didn't react, but that calm was actually divine timing at work. You were being instructed not to fight back because the more they underestimated you, the deeper they revealed themselves. People show their real nature when they think there's no consequence. And heaven needed that full exposure. The arrogance, the deceit, the manipulation, all of it brought to the surface so the truth could have clear evidence before justice arrived. That's why your silence was so dangerous. You weren't frozen, you were listening. You weren't passive, you were observing. Every word they spoke became documentation, every action a confession. You were the witness the universe planted right in the middle of their performance. They thought they were using you as a prop in their little play, not realizing the whole production was being recorded for judgment. When the trap finally closed, no one could claim innocence. The proof had been gathered through their own pride. You see it clearly now. Being misjudged was your greatest protection. If they had seen your true strength, they would have hidden their intentions better. But heaven needed them overconfident, careless, loud. So you played along, letting them believe you were unaware, while destiny set the stage behind the scenes. When truth finally moved, it didn't need your defense. It moved with precision. Now, as everything unfolds, you don't need revenge, you just need perspective. The same mouths that mocked you will one day whisper your name with caution, not because you fought them, but because they finally realized who they were dealing with. You were never losing, you were luring. Your stillness wasn't weakness, it was divine patience waiting for the perfect click of the trap heaven designed through your humility. Number 14. You're not here to survive the system. You're here to end it gracefully. You were never meant to just endure this world's madness. You were meant to out-evolve it. Survival was the training ground, not the destination. You learned how to move through broken systems, not so you could fit into them, but so you could learn their structure. Every flaw, every manipulation, every silent compromise it demands. You needed that insight because you weren't sent to protest the system. You were sent to end it, not with fire, but with frequency. The way you live, think, and love is already rewriting its rules. You've seen what corruption does, how it feeds on fear, greed, and obedience. Most people either conform to it or fight it angrily, not realizing both reactions feed the same machine. But you're different. You've learned the art of graceful rebellion. You don't resist by attacking. You resist by being untouchably real. When you embody truth with consistency, deception collapses by default. It can't feed off you because you've stopped giving it emotion. You don't mirror the world's chaos. You stabilize it just by standing in your authenticity. That's the kind of warfare that doesn't make headlines, but it shifts timelines. You've stopped trying to prove your goodness or justify your path because you know your mere existence in alignment is confrontation enough. Every time you choose integrity over impulse, peace over performance, truth over trend, you pull a brick from the foundation of the system itself. You're not out to destroy anyone. You're out to make the old structures irrelevant by being something higher than their design. You're not reacting to the world. You're rewriting it through example. That's why the system can't trap you. Your mind no longer runs on its operating software. You don't crave its validation. You don't fear its punishment. And you don't depend on its rewards. You've detached from its illusions completely. And that detachment is what makes you dangerous to its control. You didn't come here to rage. You came here to render the system obsolete by embodying something purer. You are the quiet end of an old age, the soft reset dressed as grace. You won't topple corruption by shouting at it. You'll dissolve it by living so truthfully that the lie can't breathe in your presence. That's how empires fall, not with explosions, but with enlightenment. You've walked through fire, silence, darkness, and deception, and emerged not just unbroken, but elevated. Every betrayal, every underestimation, every mockery was part of a divine design, a secret curriculum to awaken the weapon within you. You weren't merely surviving, you were mastering the art of subtle domination, the kind that dismantles falsehoods without raising a hand. You've learned to move unseen, strike without force, and shift realities with the precision of presence. You're not loud because loudness belongs to the insecure. Your power is quiet, inevitable, and undeniable. The world misjudged you because it had to. The trap needed to close perfectly. The illusions needed exposure, and the truth needed a vessel capable of moving with both grace and authority. Pain was your armor, stillness your strategy, and authenticity your most lethal weapon. You don't argue, you don't chase, and you don't fight. You simply exist, and in that existence, deception falters, egos collapse, and the universe rebalances. You are the spiritual assassin they never suspected, the calm before every collapse, and the unseen force that quietly corrects what the world thinks it controls. This is your reminder. You are not ordinary. You are hidden by design, trained by adversity, and sharpened by silence. Every moment of misunderstanding, every whispered doubt, every dismissal of your worth was actually preparation for the unveiling of your true power. You fooled them all, not by pretending, but by remembering who you always were. And now, fully aligned, you don't just move through life, you change it. If this message resonated with you and reminded you of the power you carry, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more truth that hits deeper than surface inspiration. Like this video to amplify the energy. Comment your thoughts or revelations below so others can feel your insight. And share it with anyone who needs a reminder that they are far stronger and more unseen than the world allows them to believe. Your presence here isn't accidental. It's the start of a new awakening. Stay blessed always.